Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have signed a defense pact to guard against possible external threats in the region. Known as the Alliance of Sahel States, the body will guide the three nations on how to engage in future military attacks. Joseph Ochieno is a writer and commentator on African affairs. He joins us now for more on this. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mr. Ochieno. Help us understand, or rather, let's get your understanding of this pact and what it's all about.
It's merely politics. It's solidarity. But, you know, it's actually a smart move. Part of what people are asking is whether or not these three nations together, combined with their army, can face ECOWAS, and ECOWAS backed possibly by external forces. The issue is which sensible African leader or which sensible African as such would like to see another Libya, would like to see an Iraq, would like to see a Syria. These nations thought about it from that perspective and simply came together in solidarity. You know, it is extraordinary that we've reached this stage where military after military is taking over, and the political leadership of this continent have not yet convened a major urgent summit in Addis Ababa to say, what do we do? In as long as they play that game at the surface, we know their underlying issues, we know their ideological, rather their geopolitical issues, but quite clearly it's a crisis for the continent.
Okay, I'd like for us to take a look at that meeting that you suggest at in Addis Ababa by the African Union. But you spoke of ECOWAS being backed by external forces. So when you take a look at ECOWAS, do you perceive it the same, or is it perceived the same more so after this recent coup in Niger and the stance that it took, threatening a full-on confrontation?
You know, ECOWAS was right to reach a stage in which it was threatening military intervention in Niger, but they started it badly. That was the last card that they had. You don't begin by threatening to invade. You don't begin by hitting your 10 little kids when you've not taught them how to brush their teeth. I'm not saying it's as simplistic as that. It is clearly the case that I think they underestimated the feelings both in Niger and in the region, and right now on the continent, where it seems democratic politics has sort of is dying and is struggling, where neoliberalist agenda, structured adjustment programs imposed on the continent is biting in a negative way. I don't think they looked at the underlying circumstances leading to this. Of course, there are issues to do with Russia and many of those other places. But no, the fact that it was first started by thinking that, well, they'll go to Niger the way they went to the Gambia is mistaken. But nobody is saying that these military guys have got the legitimate grounds to be where they are. Nor are they necessarily the panacea for our politics and our economy and the future. No, simply that we need to be able to address the underlying issues. And the underlying issues is not military coups. The underlying issues seem not to be any more whether or not elections have taken place, but what quality of elections, what kind of leaders that emerge. And beyond that, what is it that is being delivered to the African peoples? And in these particular sub-regions where, you know, huge amount of wealth, but countries and citizens are ordinarily poor, those are the things which are coming at the top at the moment. And who is on the spotlight? It is ECOWAS. The coup leaders in Niger were saying, look, you know, when the elections were being rigged, where were you? When our people are disappearing in prisons across the continent, where are you? When opposition leaders are being whipped and beaten, where are you? When billions in dollars of our monies are being siphoned by a few individuals and their families at the top of political leadership, where are you? These are issues that we should be able to address from Cape to Cairo, and indeed really from Mombasa to Durban.
Mr. Ochieno, you mentioned that you are perplexed that by now leaders have not gathered in Addis Ababa, the diplomatic capital of the continent under the auspices of the African Union. That country too, though, stands accused of various atrocities. If you take a look at the Amhara region, for instance, and the African Union, I'm not sure to your knowledge if they have said anything in terms of what is going on in that country. And so when you speak of underlying issues, just how much appetite is there? It's 2023, and Africa is still, it's 2023. What is it going to take?
I absolutely do not know. I have campaigned around these issues for the rest of my life. I've campaigned around these issues when South Africa was still under apartheid, and some of us were young, emergent African youth who thought that with the coming out of Nelson Mandela, with the death of the Cold War, this continent would be different. Right now, there is quite a clear absence of leadership. What will it take? It will take leadership. It needs some man or woman, a leader or an African continent to bang the tables and say, you guys, we can't do it this way. It's no longer why the Sisulus died. It's no longer why the Mandelas died. It's no longer why the Hanis of this world died. It's no longer why the Obotes of this world, died. No. What is it that we sought our independence for? And are we independent? So questioning our relationship with France, questioning our relationship with London and Washington, questioning our own leaders. How is it that somebody who came to the streets of Johannesburg the other day, hardly with a pair of slippers for their smart walking, 10 years later, they control billions and billions worth of property in Sandton. What is happening? That is the question that we need to be asking, a question which is almost revolutionary, but does not need to be revolutionary in guns on arms. It is one that requires top leadership amongst Africans, but maybe you guys in the media asking more of those questions. And young Africans, like some of us were 20, 30 years ago, beginning to ask some of these questions at institutions of higher learning, meaning universities and colleges, and beginning to demand leadership for ourselves. It is extremely urgent that this happens. In a stage in which we talk BRICS, but part of the BRICS thing is that we are junior partners. In the time in which we are talking new emergent powers, whether it's India, China, and other nations that were mainly minor nations the other day, it's extremely urgent that Africa is not left behind.
It's been a long, long while since the Nkurumas, the Selassies, the Nyereres of this world actually were asking questions. And you are saying that for 30 years you've been asking the same question. That's scary because it would appear that the more things change, then the more things stay the same. If you're asking the same questions, what should that tell us? Because if you take a look at this alliance, you noted in the beginning that it's not such a bad thing. And then you've got, for instance, France, which is supporting the G5 Sahel force, for instance. And so when you ask, are we independent? Yeah, I'm just almost flabbergasted because what does that then mean, right, for the continent if we are asking in 2023, are we independent? And we are seeing, while there's so much progress, please let me say that because, the pessimist title is not quite comfortable. But while we have seen so much progress, it would seem that systematically there's still a stronghold that is denying the progress.
To the extent you're absolutely right, that when you talk progress, and I just give myself a thought in 30 seconds, I quickly then realize that actually there's possibly no progress. But if part of progress is that we are independent, meaning voted black faces at the top, then actually we have a 1% black elite controlling the majority of the wealth of the majority of the citizens of those respective African countries, whatever it is. Maybe you can even see it without prejudice, I don't want to go there, from including South Africa, some of the debates, whether it's about land, whether it's about the Gupta brothers. You go to Zimbabwe, you go to Zambia, you go to, say, in Angola. These are powerful, wealthy nations. What is happening in Congo, DRA? Granted, some other nations are there. But if African nations like Rwanda and Uganda can go and loot Congo openly today, what then are their brethren leaders in Johannesburg or Pretoria are saying and talking to them? If that does not happen, then I think we're in a situation which is far worse. I tell you what, we were quarreling that these guys were siphoning our resources. Some of our leaders can go ahead and give a junk equivalent of our provinces to one dubious Chinese or Indian businessman, not to as a lease, but to control and to own. What then is going to be the fate and destiny of you or my children, in this case possibly my grandchildren? It's extremely worrying, meaning what is happening at the moment is legal appetite in some cases, without prejudice, sometimes in education particularly. But what's happening at the moment is legal colonization and exploitation by forces backed by our own people. Let Milton call them Nyampalas, meaning head boys on behalf of exploitative external African forces. It's extraordinary.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, writer and commentator on African affairs, joining us from Kampala in Uganda. More news for you in a few moments.